Thank you very much, Ted. And I appreciate all the things you've been doing for the team.
In November 1996, Ken Caminiti won the National League MVP unanimously. All 28 first-place votes.
So I just try to roll with the punches and stay low-key. And then as soon as he says, hey, MVP, it's like, no, don't say it anymore,
6 years later, he admitted the season ran on a needle. 8 years later, he was dead at 41. And what that cost the man who told it. Ken Caminiti built a reputation long before he became a household name. He was selected in the third round of the 1984 Major League Baseball draft out of San Jose State University, where his coach, Gene Menges, watched him play with unmatched work ethic and athletic ability.
And it's a high shot, right field, Wilson back, and it's a home run! Ken, the Astros have tied it 1-1.
He made his big league debut on July 16, 1987, immediately making an impact by hitting a home run and a triple. For the next 10 seasons, Caminiti played as a switch-hitting third baseman for the Houston Astros. His final statistics during his decade in Houston painted a picture of a solid regular rather than an elite superstar, as he never hit more than 18 home runs in a single season. However, those raw numbers failed to capture the absolute physical intensity he brought to the diamond every single night. Caminiti played baseball with a fierce, hard-nosed football linebacker mentality. He became widely known as a gritty grinder who played through excruciating physical pain without ever complaining. Teammates watched in awe as he broke bats over his knee in frustration and uncorked unbelievable jaw-dropping throws from his knees to nail runners at first base. His close friend and teammate, Craig Biggio, had the best seat in the house behind the plate as a catcher, watching him make defensive plays on the left side of the infield that rivaled the legendary Brooks Robinson and Ozzie Smith. On December 28, 1994, his career underwent a massive shift. The Houston Astros and the San Diego Padres executed a blockbuster 12-player trade, the largest transaction in Major League Baseball history in terms of players involved since 1957.
I've never been traded before. As it turns out, I'm very excited about coming here.
The Padres were coming off a strike-shortened season where they finished in last place in the National League West, and they desperately needed to bring in players who could draw fans back to the stands. San Diego traded shortstop Ricky Gutierrez, outfielder Derek Bell, pitcher Pedro Martinez, not the Hall of Fame pitcher, outfielder Phil Plantier, relief pitcher Doug Brocail, and infielder Craig Shipley to the Astros. In return, the Padres received Andujar Cedeno, Steve Finley, Roberto Pettagini, Brian Williams, Sean Fesh, and Ken Caminiti. At 31 years of age, Caminiti was seen as a solid, dependable veteran who would bring stability to a rebuilding club.
We also acquired third baseman Ken Caminiti, 31 years old. He was an all-star last year.
Nothing about the transaction suggested that a future MVP was changing hands. But beneath his relentless, warrior-like exterior, serious cracks were already forming in his personal life. His dependency on alcohol and painkillers didn't start with his major league success. It predated his fame by several years. According to Dan Good's biography, his struggle began in middle school when he started drinking beer, progressed to marijuana in high school, and eventually to crack cocaine by 1990.
It kind of goes back to his earlier days of he was always around people, even dating back to his high school and college days. Some of his friends had pursued steroids themselves.
In 1993, he checked into a rehabilitation clinic for treatment of addiction to alcohol and painkillers, proving his vulnerabilities were deeply entrenched long before his career took off. Behind this destructive cycle lay a deeply guarded, agonizing secret. In his biography of Caminiti, Dan Good writes that during rehabilitation sessions in 2001 and 2002, Caminiti disclosed to others that he had been the victim of childhood sexual abuse starting in middle school.
The seeds of his destruction had been set up long before and date back early in his life. And it was really sad to peel back those layers and recognize how far back the trauma in his life went and how far back all those problems went.
While these secondhand recollections remained vague, those close to him believed this buried trauma was a primary driving force behind his lifelong struggle with addiction, as he turned to alcohol and drugs in a desperate attempt to anesthetize his inner torment. Even during his marriage to Nancy Smith, whom he married on November 14, 1987, and with whom he had 3 daughters, Kendall, Lindsay, and Nicole, the darkness remained hidden from the world. He spent years running from his secrets, using substances to dull his mind, but the private battles behind closed doors continued to consume him. In 1996, something changed. The 18-homer guy hit 40. The steady regular became the best player in the league. What he added that spring, he wouldn't admit to for another 6 years. The transformation of a steady 18-homer regular into the most feared power hitter in baseball caught everyone off guard. Early in the 1996 season, a shoulder injury threatened to derail Ken Caminiti's entire career. By his own account, which he later shared with Sports Illustrated, that injury drove him to seek an alternative to keep playing. In his telling of the timeline, he decided to travel across the border to Mexico to purchase anabolic steroids. He bought performance-enhancing drugs and self-administered them, knowing absolutely nothing about cycles, safe dosages, or medical supervision. He was simply a desperate competitor trying to survive the physical grind and protect his livelihood. The biological shift was immediate and powerful. He told writer Tom Verducci that he felt like Superman as the synthetic testosterone surged through his body. The second half of his 1996 season was the stuff of absolute legend. He caught fire after the All-Star break, leading the National League with a .360 batting average, 28 home runs, and 81 RBIs in the second half alone. He carried a mediocre San Diego Padres roster all the way to the National League West Division title on the very final day of the season. During that historic season, he hit from both sides of the plate, homering from both sides of the plate in a single game 4 times that year to set a major league record. The defining moment of this run occurred on August 18, 1996, in Monterrey, Mexico, during a historic series against the New York Mets. The night before, Caminiti had eaten a bad salad, contracting severe food poisoning that left him profoundly dehydrated and suffering from diarrhea. On the morning of the game, he lay semi-conscious on a gurney in a cramped hallway of the stadium, looking like death personified. The team's medical staff administered 2 liters of intravenous fluids, using a crude coat hanger to suspend the IV bag in the cramped locker room. He could barely speak or mumble, but he refused to let manager Bruce Bochy take him out of the starting lineup. Stumbling out to the dugout, he demanded a Snickers candy bar for energy. Eating the chocolate bar on his way to home plate, he hit 2 massive home runs off New York Mets pitching, driving in 4 runs to lead the Padres to an 8-0 victory.
Looking up, and goodbye home run. A 3-run shot.
This sparked an incredible 10-game stretch in which he hit 7 home runs and drove in 22 runs while going 17 for 36 at the plate, cementing his status as the most intimidating presence in the game. His defensive plays that season were just as spectacular. During one memorable game against the Florida Marlins, an opposing batter hit a screaming grounder down the third baseline. Caminiti dived deep to his right, caught the ball in foul territory, and from his seat on the ground, with his butt on the turf, unleashed a rocket throw to first base, beating the runner by 3 steps. If you look up the official box score from that game, it simply reads that Colbrun grounded out third to first, completely hiding the fact that Caminiti had just completed one of the most physically impossible defensive plays in baseball history. His final single-season statistics were historic. A career-high .326 average, 40 home runs, 130 RBIs, a .408 on-base percentage, and a franchise record .621 slugging percentage, which remains the highest single-season slugging percentage in Padres history. In November 1996, he was voted the National League Most Valuable Player. It was the first and still only MVP in Padres history. At the time, it was celebrated as a redemption story of a warrior playing through agony. But the triumph was hollow in hindsight. The sport had no testing, no rules, and no desire to look behind the curtain. Most players who used it in that era took the secret with them. Caminiti did the opposite. In 2002, he walked up to a reporter and said all of it out loud, and he didn't apologize for a word of it. The decision of a retired superstar to expose the biggest secret in the history of American sports shocked the athletic world. In May 2002, Ken Caminiti sat down in his Houston area home with Sports Illustrated writer Tom Verducci. Ken had been retired since 2001, his body completely broken by years of injuries and substance abuse. They didn't meet in a high-end executive office, but on simple folding lawn chairs inside Ken's garage, surrounded by car parts and tools. Later that evening, they went to his usual local pancake house, where the staff knew him so well they immediately brought him his usual order of 10 egg whites. During that dinner, Ken turned to Verducci and asked if this was going to be a big story. When Verducci told him it would be massive, Ken paused, looked him in the eye, and said, "I've got nothing to hide." He had no interest in protecting a system that had quietly profited off the bodies of its players while feigning ignorance. The explosive nature of his confession made sense when looking at what Major League Baseball resembled in 2002. The game was practically a pharmaceutical trade show. Players were growing freakish with glistening skin, shaved body hair, protruding chins, and helmets that no longer fit their growing heads. Clean players were whispering in absolute frustration, angry that they had to either juice or accept a massive competitive disadvantage, potentially losing their jobs. At age 36, Giants outfielder Barry Bonds had just hit 73 home runs, shattering records and raising deep suspicions across the country. Yet, nobody wanted to speak the truth out loud. Then came June 3rd, 2002. The Sports Illustrated cover story, titled "Totally Juiced," featured a drawing of a baseball overlaid with 2 syringes. It hit newsstands and instantly ignited a national firestorm. Ken became the first prominent player in baseball history to openly admit on the record that he had used anabolic steroids during his career, including his historic 1996 MVP season. He estimated that at least half the players in Major League Baseball were using performance-enhancing drugs, exposing a toxic culture where players either juiced or were pushed out of the game. His willingness to speak up shattered the silence of an entire industry. What stunned the sporting world was his complete lack of remorse. He didn't offer a tearful, prepared apology. The line that traveled across every headline in the country was stark. "I've made a ton of mistakes. I don't think using steroids is one of them." He explained that steroids gave him the competitive edge he needed to protect his livelihood when millions of dollars were on the line. But the physical cost of that edge was devastating. He confessed that his heavy steroid use in 1996 had caused his testicles to shrink and retract, and completely shut down his natural testosterone production, leaving him physically compromised, lethargic, and deeply depressed after his career ended. The backlash from the baseball establishment was swift and ruthless. Ken was immediately cast as a pariah, a villain, and a cautionary tale. Fellow players and union representatives criticized him, trying to isolate his confession as the isolated rant of a troubled, unstable addict, rather than acknowledging it as the urgent warning of a systemic league-wide epidemic. Some accused him of trying to destroy the integrity of the game, while others simply dismissed his claims to protect their own careers. He had handed baseball the mirror it desperately avoided, and the sport turned its back on it. The confession finally forced baseball to act. It did nothing for the man who made it. The institution got its reckoning. Caminiti got 2 more years. Through the late 90s, Major League Baseball had no testing, no penalties, and a massive home run boom that was filling stadiums and bringing back fans after the 1994 strike. The league's willful blind spot was essentially its business model. But when Ken's confession hit the newsstands, the league could no longer claim it didn't know what was happening behind closed doors. When the system was finally forced to look at its own reflection, the results were immediate. Senator John McCain read the Sports Illustrated article and called Senator Byron Dorgan, the chairman of the Senate Subcommittee on Consumer Affairs, telling him to call an immediate meeting. Within 15 days, Union Chief Donald Fear and MLB labor negotiator Rob Manfred were testifying before a congressional committee. Just 50 days after that, with their reputations in complete disrepute, the players agreed to the very first random drug testing program in the sport's history. The system had moved, but only because it had been backed into a corner. Yet, as the league began to clean up its image, Ken's personal life was spiraling out of control. In March 2001, he was arrested for crack cocaine possession and placed on 3 years of probation. Over the course of his probation, he failed 4 separate drug tests, unable to break the cycle of addiction. His marriage ended in divorce in December 2002. In 2004, the Padres hired him as a spring training instructor, hoping he could warn young players away from his own path. On October 5, 2004, he admitted a probation violation after testing positive for cocaine and was released on time served. 5 days later, on October 10, 2004, Ken was in a small, seedy apartment in the Bronx, New York. He had traveled to New York against the explicit advice of his attorney, Kent Schaefer, who warned him that entering that environment would lead to a highly toxic situation. Ken was there trying to help his girlfriend's son, who was struggling with drug addiction. A testament to his generosity. As friends recalled, he would easily hand out thousands of dollars to help people get into drug treatment. Inside the apartment, Ken went in to use the bathroom, came out, said he felt unwell, and collapsed on the floor. He went into cardiac arrest and was rushed to Lincoln Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 6:45 p.m. that evening at the age of 41. The medical examiner officially ruled his death as an accident, caused by acute intoxication from the combined effects of cocaine and opiates. Artery disease and an enlarged heart were listed as contributing factors. Steroids were not listed as the direct cause of his death. Rather, the medical examiner noted that years of heavy drug abuse had weakened his heart, making it unable to survive the final overdose. Following an emotional funeral service in Solana Beach, California, attended by past and present Padres players, Ken's remains were cremated. His ashes were scattered at the Cambo Ranch in Sabinal, Texas, a property he had co-owned with his closest friend, Craig Biggio, who named the property as a combination of their 2 names, Cambo. In November 1996, the baseball world stood unanimous, granting Ken Caminiti every single first-place vote for the National League MVP, with Los Angeles Dodgers catcher Mike Piazza finishing in second place. The sport built a rigorous, celebrated drug testing program built entirely on his willingness to speak the truth. Yet his tarnished MVP trophy remains on his record. It reckoned with the era. It never truly reckoned with him. When a sport has no tests and no answers, it leaves its players to carry the weight of its secrets. Ken Caminiti carried that burden to his grave, leaving baseball with a clean testing program and a legacy written in both triumph and tragedy. If you appreciate these deep, unvarnished stories of sports history that look far beyond the box score, please consider supporting this channel by using the Super Thanks feature below. Every contribution helps us continue bringing these in-depth narratives. To ensure you never miss our next investigation deep dive, please hit the subscribe button now and join our community.